I am earning $8,000 monthly and giving $44,000 monthly to my parents, but they always support my younger brother. 3 days before my wedding, my cruel parents forced me to cancel it because they planned to celebrate my brother's party on the same day. I refused, and my mother slapped me hard and yelled, "How dare you? You don't obey my orders." I left the house and decided on revenge. The very next day, I gave them a shocking surprise. Now, they were on their knees. I'm Lily, and I've always been the one who kept my family going. For as long as I can remember, I've been the person they turned to when they needed help, financial help, emotional support, anything. I'm a financial analyst, and I make about $88,000 a month. It's a good salary, but the reason it's even possible for me to earn that much is because I work hard, sometimes harder than anyone I know. I've never been one to complain about my job. I love what I do. But if I'm honest, sometimes I feel like I've spent my whole life working, not just for myself, but for my family. Since I started working full time, I've been sending my parents $44,000 every month. I've never asked for anything in return. I wanted them to feel comfortable, to have a good life, and for years it was just something I did because I thought that was my responsibility. After all, I was the older one. My younger brother Ethan was always the one who needed less, the one who got everything handed to him. Ethan's 5 years younger than me, but it wasn't just the age gap that made him the favorite. It was the way my parents treated him like he could do no wrong. They'd give him everything he wanted. Every time he had a problem, they were there, even if I was the one holding everything together. It started small. When we were kids, they'd always get him better gifts, more attention, more praise. I'd hear them talk about how smart he was, how talented, how he was going to be the one who'd go places. Meanwhile, I was the practical one, the sensible one, the one who was expected to just do her part, not make waves. And I did, for years. I never questioned it. Even when I felt invisible, I just kept giving, kept doing, and stayed out of the way. But after a while, it became clear to me that Ethan was the one they cared about. The more I gave, the more they took, and the less they noticed me. I didn't expect grand gestures of affection from them, but I did expect to be seen. I never was. It was always Ethan's dreams that were important, his needs that came first. Even when it came to things like birthday celebrations or family events, it was all about him. The family would come together for him, and I'd be left to deal with everything else. It was frustrating, but it was the reality I knew. I spent years building my life around my family's expectations of me. They relied on me, emotionally, financially, in every way, and I didn't mind it at first, not at all. But as the years went on, it started to hurt. I started to feel like I was nothing more than a tool for them, a means to an end. I kept giving and giving, and they just kept taking. They never appreciated it. Not once did they ever stop and say, "Lily, thank you." Then there was David. David came into my life when I was 28. I remember meeting him at a work event. He was different from anyone I'd ever met. He didn't need me to be anything other than who I was. He accepted me without expectations, without demands. He was kind, thoughtful, and supportive in ways I had known I needed. Over time, we became inseparable. We talked about everything, our dreams, our struggles, the future we hoped to build together. I felt like I could finally breathe. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Lily, the dependable one. I was Lily, the woman in love with someone who loved me back in a way that felt real. David and I started planning our wedding about 6 months ago. It was the first thing I'd done for myself in a long time. It was my moment, my chance to create something beautiful, something that was just mine. We found the perfect venue, a lovely spot near the water, and we began making the arrangements. I was so excited. But of course, my family's presence hung over everything. My mom called me a few days ago, and everything changed. I'll never forget that call. I was sitting in my living room scrolling through the final details for the wedding when my phone buzzed. It was my mom. She didn't even wait for me to say hello. "Lily, I need you to cancel your wedding," she said. I froze. "What? Mom, what are you talking about?" "It's Ethan's birthday that weekend," she continued, as if this was perfectly reasonable. "We can't have a wedding on the same day. It's too much for everyone. I want you to move it to next year. It's the only way." I was in shock. "Mom, no. I can't. I've already made all the plans. We've been looking forward to this for months." She didn't care. "You don't understand. Ethan's birthday is important. He's my son, and you know how much he needs us right now." I tried to explain. I tried to tell her that this was my wedding, the biggest moment of my life, but she just kept repeating that Ethan came first. Then she dropped the bombshell. "If you don't cancel it, Lily, you'll regret it. You have 24 hours." My heart raced as I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear. The ultimatum. She was serious. I had never felt so small, so insignificant. How could she do this to me after everything I had done for them? This was how they repaid me, by demanding that I cancel my wedding for Ethan's birthday. I tried to hold back my tears, but the frustration and hurt overwhelmed me. I hung up the phone, feeling completely numb. This was it. The moment I realized that nothing would ever change. No matter how much I gave, I would always be second to Ethan. I can't even describe how I felt after that phone call. I sat there in silence, trying to make sense of what my mom had said. I was shaken, stunned, and honestly, I felt completely crushed. My whole life I had given so much to my family. I had sacrificed my own wants and needs, thinking that's what being a good daughter meant. And now, when it came to my own happiness, my own wedding, the most important moment in my life, they wanted me to throw it all away. I spent the next few hours pacing around my apartment, replaying the conversation over and over again in my mind. I kept asking myself, why is Ethan so special? Why is his birthday more important than my wedding day? I wasn't asking for the world. I was just asking for my family to support me for once. But no, they couldn't even do that. After I hung up with my mom, I texted David. He was at work and I knew he wouldn't be home for hours. But I needed to talk to him. I needed to hear his voice. He called me right away and I could hear the concern in his tone. "Lily, what happened?" he asked. "What's going on?" "Mom called," I said, trying to hold back the tears. "She wants me to cancel the wedding. Ethan's birthday is on the same day, and she's insisting that I move everything to next year. She says the wedding will mess up the family's plans. She says I have 24 hours to decide." I could hear the anger building in his voice. "That's ridiculous. You've been planning this for months. You've made all the arrangements. How can they just ask you to cancel everything because of Ethan's birthday?" "I don't know," I whispered. "It's not just about the wedding. It's about everything. I've spent my whole life being second to him. I've done everything they've asked, supported them financially, emotionally, and this is how they repay me." David's voice softened. "Lily, you don't deserve this. You've done everything for them, and they don't appreciate it. This is your moment. Don't let them take it from you." I needed to hear those words. I needed someone to tell me that I wasn't crazy for standing up for myself. For the first time in so long, I felt like someone saw me, truly saw me, not just as the dependable daughter, but as a woman with dreams and hopes of her own. We spent the rest of the evening talking, making plans. David didn't want me to cancel anything. He wanted to support me no matter what. But I also knew that I couldn't let my parents manipulate me into canceling my wedding. I had worked too hard for this day, and it was mine to have. The next morning, I called my mom back, determined not to give in. I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. I couldn't. I took a deep breath before dialing her number. Mom, I'm not canceling the wedding, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've made my decision. This is my wedding day, and nothing is going to change that. She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold. You're making a huge mistake, Lily. You're being selfish. This wedding isn't even about you. It's about our family. But I guess that doesn't matter to you, does it? Her words cut deep, but I wasn't going to let them sway me. I'm sorry, Mom, but this wedding is happening. I'm sorry if that hurts you, but I'm not going to give up on my happiness for the sake of someone else's. I've spent my whole life putting everyone else first. It's my turn now. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end, clearly furious. You'll regret this, Lily. You'll see. You're making a mistake. I held my ground. I'm sorry, but I'm not backing down. This is what's best for me. And with that, I hung up. I was shaking. I had never stood up to my mom like that before. She had always had so much control over me, and now I had just shattered that control. But in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need anyone's approval but my own. I didn't expect my mom to understand, and I didn't expect her to be happy for me. But I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing this for me. I needed to take back my life, to stop living for others, and finally put myself first. David and I started making new plans for the wedding. It was going to be smaller now, just close friends and a few family members who truly cared about us. No more trying to appease my parents. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. The next day, I got a call from my Aunt Lucy. She had heard the rumors from my mom, and she wanted to make sure I was okay. The story my mom had spread about David and me breaking up, about us calling off the wedding, was completely false. Aunt Lucy was concerned, and she wanted to help. You don't need people like that in your life, Lily, she said. Your wedding should be a celebration of your love, not about appeasing your parents. We'll help you. I couldn't believe the support I was getting from the people who truly cared. It felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders. That night, David and I sat down and started making calls. We reached out to our closest friends and family, telling them the truth. I wasn't going to let my mom's lies ruin this. My wedding was happening, and I was going to make sure it was everything I dreamed it would be, on my terms. As the days passed, I felt a growing sense of peace. No matter what my family did, I was going to make this work, and I was going to do it for me. For the first time, I was choosing myself. The wedding was a whirlwind. What was supposed to be a day of celebration turned into a battle against everything I had known. But I wasn't going to let my mom's manipulation ruin it. David and I decided to go ahead with a smaller ceremony, one that was intimate and filled with people who truly cared about us. I spent the next few days pulling everything together. It was tough, but I wasn't going to let my family's drama take away my joy. I was no longer the woman who had to apologize for everything or give in to their demands. This was my time. This was about David and me and our future. David, of course, was amazing. He was by my side every step of the way. He didn't just support me emotionally. He helped with the arrangements, reaching out to our closest friends, making sure everyone knew the truth about what had happened. It was incredible to see how much David cared, how he was willing to stand with me, no questions asked. With him, I felt stronger, braver, more confident than I had ever felt before. The wedding day arrived, and I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. I was happy, but there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the sadness. The family I had worked so hard for, the family I had given everything to, was not there. Not because I didn't want them to be, but because they had chosen not to support me. They had chosen to put Ethan's birthday and their own selfishness ahead of me. It stunned me. It really did. But as I stood there, looking around at the faces of the people who had shown up for me, the people who truly cared, I realized something important. This was better. This was real. These were the people who loved me, who wanted the best for me, who weren't there because they felt obligated, but because they genuinely cared. My Uncle Tom was there, and so was Aunt Lucy, both of whom had called and reached out to support me. Some close friends we had invited, and even David's family were there too. It wasn't the grand event I had once envisioned, but it was perfect. It was honest. It was mine. As we exchanged vows, surrounded by those who mattered, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. I wasn't just marrying David that day. I was also marrying the idea of independence, of standing up for myself, of finally choosing my happiness over anyone else's expectations. The ceremony was short, sweet, and incredibly moving. When we said our vows, I could hear David's voice crack as he promised to love me for the rest of his life. It was real. It was the most beautiful moment I had ever experienced, and I was doing it on my terms. After the ceremony, we had a small reception at a local restaurant. There was laughter, food, music, and most importantly, love. People were genuinely happy for us, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't pretending to be something I wasn't. I wasn't hiding my feelings to keep the peace. I wasn't trying to fit into a mold that my family had created for me. I was free. But that night, as I lay next to David, the reality of what had just happened started to sink in. I knew things were never going to be the same with my family. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. And now I was no longer willing to let their manipulation control my life. I was done. The next morning, as I was getting ready to leave for our honeymoon, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from my mom. She had texted me about 10 times, but I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want to deal with her drama anymore. But curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the message. It was a simple, angry text. "You've made a huge mistake, Lily. You've embarrassed the family. Don't expect us to help you when you fail." The words stung, but I didn't let them hurt me. It was just more of the same. She was still trying to control me, still trying to make me feel guilty for living my life. But this time, I didn't care. I had made it clear to myself that I was done. I was done living for their approval. I was done living for anyone but myself. I deleted the message without responding. I wasn't going to let them drag me down anymore. David and I were starting a new chapter in Dallas, and I was going to make it my own. We were free from the chains of my family's toxic hold, and I felt lighter than I had in years. I realized then that the wedding wasn't just a new beginning for David and me. It was the moment I decided to stop giving in to the people who had never appreciated me. It was the moment I chose myself. The days following the wedding felt like a blur of emotions. But as I settled into my new life with David, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. It wasn't just about getting married. It was about transforming into a new version of myself, one that no longer needed my family's approval, one that understood the importance of choosing myself for once. David and I moved to Dallas soon after the wedding. We were looking for a fresh start, away from the constant drama and stress of my family. We found a cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and slowly we began to create the life I had always dreamed of. It was peaceful. It was ours. It was everything I had wanted. However, even in this new chapter, the past still had a way of creeping in. Just days after we settled in, I received another message from my mom. This time, it was even more aggressive. She accused me of abandoning my family and turning my back on them once again. She tried to make me feel guilty. I didn't even bother reading the whole message. I already knew what it would say. It was the same guilt trip, the same manipulative tactics she always used. But this time, I was strong enough to ignore it. I deleted the message without hesitation and went on with my day. For the first time, I didn't feel the familiar weight of obligation pressing on me. I knew I had made the right choice. David noticed the change in me too. He could see the relief in my eyes. "I'm proud of you, Lily," he said one evening as we sat on the balcony of our apartment, gazing at the city lights. "You've come so far. You've built a life that's truly yours. You're finally free." His words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I'd been carrying around until it was all gone. The pressure to please my parents, the constant frustration of being second to Ethan, the emotional manipulation, it had all been so heavy. But now I was free. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own life, my own happiness, and that was all that mattered. Weeks went by, and life felt more like what I had always imagined it could be. David and I grew even closer, talking about our hopes for the future, starting a family, building our careers, and always supporting each other. I knew I was where I was meant to be. Then, one afternoon, I received a call from my cousin Jake. He had heard about the wedding and everything that had gone down with my parents. He called to apologize on behalf of the family. "I don't know why they did that to you, Lily," he said. "You deserve so much better than how they treated you. I'm really sorry." I hadn't expected an apology. Honestly, I didn't think I needed it, but hearing it from Jake, someone who had always been kind to me, made me realize there were still people who cared, who saw me for who I truly was. As months passed, I began to rebuild relationships with a few family members who had always supported me: Aunt Lucy, Uncle Tom, and a few good friends. They were the ones who mattered. They hadn't tried to control me, and I hadn't been just an emotional or financial support for them. These relationships grew stronger, but my relationship with my parents, that would never be the same. I couldn't forget what they had done. They had tried to manipulate me into canceling my wedding, and they had always placed Ethan above me. No matter how much I wanted to fix things, I knew deep down that I couldn't return to that toxic cycle. One day, I saw a message from my mom. It was simple: "I miss you, Lily. Please call me." I stared at the screen, the familiar tug of guilt pulling at me. But I knew what I had fought for. I had chosen my happiness, my independence. I wasn't going back. I replied, "I'm happy with the life I've built. I can't go back to what it was. I need to move forward." In that moment, I felt peace. I had made the choice to let go of the past, and as I looked at my life with David, I knew I was truly free. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself, and that was worth everything.